It's a never new month on the channel, which of course means we'll soon be filling our normal slasher movie quota. And while what we're looking at today is not a slasher movie, it is not at all short of gore, as today we're going to look at Kingsman, the Secret Service, released in 2014. This was also a channel points request by Rob. Thank you, Rob, for using your points on this. So Kingsman, the Secret Service focuses around a young man named Eggsy who leads a completely normal life and nothing of interest happens to him at all. Which is somewhat true until he meets a mysterious man named Harry Hart who wants to bring him into a top secret spy organization called the Kingsman. Taron Egerton played Eggsy and Colin Firth Harry Hart, and there was a whole all-star cast in this film including Samuel L. Jackson, Mark Strong, Sophia Cookson, Jack Davenport, Mark Hamill, Edward Holcraft, Jeff Bell, and Michael Caine. This film clocked in a little bit over 2 hours, and on a budget of somewhere in between 81 and 94 million, it made a lot back, around 414 million. It was also directed by Matthew Vaughn, who had previously done films such as Snatch, Stardust, Kick-Ass, and X-Men First Class. And the film received pretty positive reviews, as critics praised things such as the action sequences, the performances, the score, and the dark humor. One criticism this film received was being too over the top at times, and while I agree it was over the top at times, I don't see that as a negative. And I will say to you before we go through this film, some of the scenes I'm going to describe to you, I will not be able to do justice with words, and some of them you will definitely need to see yourself, whether you look them up yourself or whether you just see the film, which I would recommend. But first we're going to go through it as we look at Kingsman, the Secret Service, released in 2014. So our film begins in the Middle East in 1997, where 4 members of the secret organization Kingsman are out to gather intelligence from terrorist leaders. The terrorist leader, who is tied to a chair, activates a bomb to blow himself up, and one of the men dives on him, killing himself and the terrorist. The man saved is revealed to be Kingsman agent Harry Hart, while the man who died is revealed to be Lee Inwin, who was in the final stages of training to become a Kingsman himself. As a result of his death, another of the men named James, who is also a recruit, officially joins the Kingsmen with the codename Lancelot. Feeling responsible for Lee's death, however, Harry goes to London to personally inform his family. He tries to give a pendant that has a special number to call to Harry's wife Michelle, which she rejects, so instead he gives it to Harry's son Gary, nicknamed Eggsy. We then go to Argentina 17 years later, where Mark Hamill is tied to a chair for some reason. Hamill plays radical climate change scientist Professor James Arnold, who has been kidnapped and held as a mystery billionaire wants to speak with him. However, Kingsman agent Lancelot then appears and murders Arnold's captors. Lancelot then hears a knock at the door, and before he can answer, he's sliced clean in half by a female assassin with metal legs nicknamed Gazelle. Get it? Gazelle, because she's got metal, let you get it. The mystery billionaire is revealed to be a man named Richmond Valentine, who's very squeamish and vomits at the sight of blood. He's also got some sort of mystery proposal for Professor Arnold, but we don't get to find out what that is yet. Meanwhile, Agent Harry Hart, who is codenamed Galahad, goes and meets Kingsman leader Chester King, codenamed Arthur. Also, for the rest of this, I'm more than likely going to describe Arthur using his code name, while Harry using his real name, as that's the names given to them through most of the movie. And with that being said, Arthur and Harry discuss the death of Lancelot, and Arthur reveals that he wants Harry to put up a new candidate to take the manor. The Kingsman intelligence head Merlin tells them that Lancelot was at that cabin to save Professor Arnold, and also reveals that Arnold is just fine and is walking around London. Meanwhile, we now meet the older Eggsy, who still wears that pendant given to him around his neck. Eggsy's mom has remarried to a man named Dean, who is very abusive and also runs a street gang. And while Eggsy and his friends are drinking at the pub that night, they're harassed by Dean's aforementioned gang. In retaliation, Eggsy steals one of the gang members' car, and they drive around the town while being chased by police. Eggsy even stops to let his friends out of the car and intentionally drives into the police car, so he's the only one caught, and he also refuses to grass his friends up. Looking at 18 plus months in prison, Eggsy decides to finally call the number on that pendant, and just like that, he's released. He also meets Harry again, who takes him for a drink and tells him a little bit about his dad, at least what he can, as most of it is classified. He also tells Eggsy a little bit about himself. Apparently Eggsy was a star student who was good at gymnastics and parkour, and also was in Marine training doing very well, but he quit all that for unknown reasons. Although Eggsy does blame it on his stepdad and also his mother's disapproval, but I'm not sure if those were the true reasons. Dean's gang then show up and then taunt Harry as he goes to leave, and Harry's had just about enough of that and beats the ever-living shit out of all of them. Eggsy then goes home, which was a mistake because Dean starts to choke him to death, but luckily Harry put a tracker on him, and Harry booms his voice into the house using some sort of speaker system, I guess from the jacket tracker, I don't know, and tells Dean you better knock that off or you're going to prison. He then tells Eggsy to come meet him at a tailor shop called Kingsman. Harry then gauges Eggsy's interest in joining, and Eggsy's like, yeah, what do I got to lose? So Harry takes him down to the Kingsman underground base. Eggsy is officially enrolled in the Lancelot candidacy, and he meets Merlin as well as fellow Lancelot candidates Roxy and Major Douchebag Charlie. Meanwhile, Richmond Valentine clearly has friends in very high places as he's talking to Obama. Later that night, the Lancelot recruits are met with their first test as their whole bunker area fills up with water. Before they drown, Eggsy smashes for a mirror, which turns out was a two-way mirror, which frees them all. So Eggsy succeeded, right? Well, actually none of them did, as turns out one of the recruits drowned and died, and this activity was about teamwork. Meanwhile, Harry angrily confronts Professor Arnold and tries to get Arnold to tell him about who kidnapped him. As the professor tries to say the name, however, his fucking head explodes due to some sort of chip in his neck, which also knocks Harry into unconsciousness and into a coma. Meanwhile, back at Lancelot training, the recruits are told to pick a dog, which will be their faithful companion, and Eggsy picks a dog, which he thinks is a bulldog, but it's not, it's a pug. Meanwhile, we see that Valentine is mass-producing the same chips that were used to explode the professor's head. We then go into montage mode as the Kingsman training continues, and also Harry wakes up from his coma. We then go to Valentine, who's offered up his mystery proposal to the Swedish Prime Minister and also the Swedish Princess. The Prime Minister seems to like it, but the Princess does not, so he has the Princess locked up. And as a symbol of his agreement, a chip is implanted in the Prime Minister's neck. Meanwhile, Eggsy meets with Harry again, and Merlin comes in to give Harry intelligence about how they linked the chip to Valentine. Eggsy also shows them Valentine's announcement from earlier, where he announced a cell phone service for free using those chips as SIM cards. Harry, posing as an anonymous billionaire, goes to have dinner with Valentine, and they snack on some Happy Meals. Harry appears to have gotten away with it, but it appears not, as Valentine puts something in his drink to track his movements. However, Harry did get footage of a pamphlet that Gazelle was holding for a religious hate group in Kentucky that could be connected to Valentine. Valentine's new free SIM card then goes out on the market, and pretty much everyone in the world buys one. And back at Kingsman training, we are now down to 3 candidates, Eggsy, Charlie, and Roxy. They're all free given their next task. They have to go to a bar and befriend some mystery woman. Before any of them can do that, however, they're drugged and pass out, and Eggsy wakes up tied to a train track. A mysterious man then demands Eggsy give up all he knows about the Kingsmen or be run over by the train. Eggsy refuses, and turns out he is not run over by the train. It was just a test, and Roxy passed too. Will Charlie pass? Well, no. Charlie will not pass, and Charlie's out. Meanwhile, Valentine and Gazelle set up an activation system for whatever his big plan is that can only be activated by his hand. Harry and Eggsy, meanwhile, who are spending the day together, go to get Eggsy fitted for his first Kingsman suit, which he'll get to keep regardless of whether he gets the job or not. But they're not the only ones at the tailor's, because Valentine is there too, getting fitted for a new suit, and it's strongly implied that he knows about them now. Eggsy, meanwhile, goes to meet with Arthur, who gives him his next test, a gun, and tells him to shoot his dog with it. Merlin tells Roxy to do the same thing. Eggsy ultimately refuses, and we hear a gunshot in the background, meaning Roxy did it, and Roxy is the new Lancelot. Eggsy then steals Arthur's car and goes home with his dog. After seeing his mom with a black eye, he goes to confront Dean, but before he can get out of the car, it locks up on him and begins driving by itself. It drives him to Harry's address, and Harry's like, so you couldn't shoot the dog, huh? And shows him his dead dog. Oh my god, he fucking stuffed his dead dog? Well, he did, but after the dog died 14 years after he shot it, because the gun contained the blank. Harry then tells Eggsy to remain at his house so they can discuss this further after Harry gets back from attending that hate church, and let me tell you, it's exactly what you'd think a hate church to be. Like, if you're sensitive to Strong, homophobic, racist, all that language. There's a lot of that in this. When it turns out Valentine is watching the sermon through a secret camera, and he knows all about the Kingsman now, as he confirms. Harry notices the camera, and as he goes to leave, the cell phones in everyone's pocket, which contain Valentine's SIM cards, go off, and then all hell breaks loose. What does all hell breaks loose mean? Well, one of the damnedest things I've ever seen. A massive brawl with everybody fighting, and Harry kills everyone in the church. And this is one of the scenes I was talking about. It is about 5 minutes, it is graphic, it is awesome, and I cannot do justice with words. And even if you don't want to watch the whole movie, at least look up this scene, because it is incredible. And after Harry kills, again, everyone in the church, he begins to come to his senses. He then walks out of the church and meets Valentine face to face, and asks him what the hell was that, as he couldn't control himself. Valentine fakes revealing his plan to Harry, but instead shoots him in the face, killing him. Merlin was watching this footage through Harry's glasses, and so was Eggsy, so he knows as well, as was Arthur, so all of them know. Eggsy even goes to the Kingsman headquarters to confront Arthur and ask him what he's gonna do, and Arthur's like, not much we can do, we'll just push it to the proper authorities. Eggsy sits down with Arthur to have a drink, and then he notices an implant scar on Arthur's neck. After Eggsy calls him on it, Arthur reveals that the whiskey Eggsy just drunk contains something that can be activated by a pen Arthur has that will kill Eggsy almost instantly. And he then finally, about 88 minutes into this movie, reveals what Valentine's master plan is. Turns out Valentine is using those SIM cards to make everyone violent and kill each other, much like he did in the church, to cull the population as to prevent global warming. Global warming again, it's just like birdemic. And the only people that will survive are the chosen few with the implants in their neck. Arthur then offers Eggsy the chance to join them, and Eggsy tells him to go fuck himself, so Arthur clicks the pen. But when Arthur wasn't looking, Eggsy switched the drinks, and Arthur just killed himself. Eggsy then presents the proof of everything that just happened to Merlin and Roxy, and Merlin decides that them three have to go stop Valentine. Merlin then devises a plan. Roxy's gonna go up just to the edge of the atmosphere in a big old weather balloon thing and shoot a missile at one of the satellites that Valentine owns, which will buy them some time. Meanwhile, Eggsy, using Arthur's real name of Chester King, is gonna go into Valentine's secret underground bunker and try to shut the whole thing down. The plan goes into motion, and Eggsy knocks out the Swedish Prime Minister to steal his laptop and get Merlin onto the network. However, Eggsy is then intercepted by Charlie, who is now working for Valentine. Roxy then shoots that missile at the satellite, and Eggsy knocks out Charlie and books it. As Eggsy escapes and Roxy barely activates her parachute, Valentine decides to speed up his countdown and activate the whole thing now. But right before Valentine can activate it, that missile blows up that satellite, breaking a circle he's formed, and that buys him some time. Merlin also finds that he can't shut the whole thing down remotely, as it's tied to Valentine's handprint. And that means Eggsy, who had just made it back to the plane, is going to have to go back in and kill Valentine. Meanwhile, Valentine calls one of his friends, who also owns a satellite, to bring his satellite over to continue the plan. Eggsy is then cornered by a lot of guards, and Merlin's about to have missiles shot at him, so it looks like they're both fucked. Not quite though, however, as Merlin had found out that there was only one aspect that Valentine didn't require his handprint to be used and could be accessed remotely, and that was the implants in his chosen's head. Merlin then activates the implants, and the heads of all the chosen people, including Obama, explode. Eggsy even meets the Crown Princess of Sweden, who offers to let him fuck her in the ass if he saves the world. That is not a joke, that's what actually happens. And Eggsy's gonna need to move quick, as Valentine, despite his chosen being killed, has activated the SIM cards, and everyone around the world is beating the shit out of each other. Eggsy momentarily stops Valentine, but then Gazelle starts to do battle with him, and Valentine reactivates the thing. Eggsy wins the battle by slicing Gazelle with the tip of a blade in his shoe, which causes her to immediately die. He then takes one of Gazelle's legs and throws it right through Valentine's heart, which causes him to vomit and then die. Well, the whole world is saved, and Eggsy is off to fuck the Princess of Sweden in the ass. And now the film's over. Well, not quite, as we do have a mid-credit scene. Eggsy, under Harry's old alias of Galahad, and now a Kingsman, goes to meet his mother and confront Dean, and tells his mother to come live with him at his new house. And much in the fashion that Harry did earlier, beats the shit out of Dean and his gang. Whew, let me tell you, this movie is a ride, and to address that biggest criticism, is it over the top? Absolutely. Is that a bad thing? Absolutely not. To be honest, I would argue the over-the-topness really makes the film. Like that scene I was talking to you about in the church, it's just one of the damnedest things I've ever seen in my life. It's like less blood, but it's like Kill Bill Crazy 88's level of violent, just with a little bit less blood. I mean, I think he kills more people than Beatrix did in that scene. I mean, it's... you have to watch that for yourself. I can't even do it justice, but I don't understand the criticism for it being over the top. Over the top is what made the film. And the biggest praise that I can give this film is that it's never boring at any point. It's exciting all the way through, whether it's the beginning with the build-up and Harry's scenes and all of the Kingsman training and all of Valentine's plotting. By the way, Samuel L. Jackson did a very good job in this movie. I know sometimes people roll their eyes when they see him in a movie because he's in fucking everything, but he was very good as the villain. It didn't seem like a typical Samuel L. Jackson role, although he did slip in a motherfucker here and there. But honestly, the only way that I could discourage you from this movie would be, funny enough, if you suffer from the same thing that our main villain suffered from. If you're squeamish, if you don't like blood, if you don't like violence, then this is probably not the movie for you, because there is a lot of it. Again, there are slasher movie level of gore in this film. But if you're fine with that, and you like a fun plot, well acted, great villain, very funny, just incredible action, very satisfying, fun all the way through, then I'd say this is the perfect film for you, because it's fantastic. And I did just mention slasher films, so you're probably wondering, when are we going back to slasher films? Well, next week, as we look at Friday the 13th Part 3. But that is it for Kingsman. In conclusion, seriously, unless you don't like blood and violence, watch this film. I guarantee you'll like it. Fun all the way through. Fantastic movie. That is it for me today, though. Thank you again, Rob, for using your points to request this. I appreciate it. That is it for my look back at Kingsman: The Secret Service. And thank you guys for watching. If you liked the video, be sure to leave it a like. If you want to follow any of my social media links, they're all in the video description down below. Thank you to all my Patreons for supporting me and my channels. I appreciate you guys. With all that being said, though, my name is Noah Taft. This has been my look back at Kingsman: The Secret Service, released in 2014. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye.